Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me are Nick Martin, and back from his NASCAR adventure is Tim Kalinowski. Together, the three of us are going to break down the upcoming two Stanley Cup playoff games. That would be Game 4 in Edmonton between the Stars and Oilers on Wednesday night, and then Game 5 at Madison Square Garden between the Panthers and Rangers. Stars up 2-1. Panthers Rangers knotted at deuces. We'll start in northern Alberta, for where the Oilers are minus 130 at home. Stars are plus 108. The series line is sitting minus 265 for Dallas, plus 215 for Edmonton. Basically the same price we saw for Game 3. Nick, you and I were talking about how we both. I ended up betting the Oilers. You were talking about liking the Oilers more than the Stars at that moment. And then Rupe Hintz comes into the game, or takes warm-ups. I think that changes the dynamic of the series pretty considerably. And the goaltending situation now for Edmonton becomes a huge question mark after Skinner was passable for the first two games. Gives up a huge goal at the end, just at this point of a huge soft goal, and at this point of the playoffs, you give up one cheapie, you're going to pay for it. They did. I'm kind of flip-flopping here and looking at Dallas as an underdog, Nick.
Yeah, I'm a little indifferent. I think the goaltending is a huge factor. I thought that overall the Oilers are getting a little worse than they probably deserve. They clearly just took a whole period off. The Stars also did the exact same thing in the first, and then I thought the third was probably closer than I think it seems like the average take is, right? Like, considering that I didn't end up going on the Oilers, I was rooting pretty hard for Dallas, and it was pretty close. I think Desharnais' that play where he hit the post could have gone either way. Skinner was pretty sharp overall. That kind of sucks for him to just completely be wearing it, but it goes back to the point that we've talked about in the playoffs. You really, if your goalie gives up one goal that just absolutely shouldn't happen, you almost always lose. Like, it's almost a rule. There's so few blowouts that once there's one goal that just essentially should never happen, it's very, very hard to overcome. So I do think you probably have to lean with the Stars here, but I don't have like a passionate take one way or another. I think it's just one of those things. It feels like it's closer to a coin flip than plus 115. So I guess you got to take your shot. And yeah, the Hintz, it was funny because I thought in the first he looked fairly off. I think the few times that he did have the puck, his touches looked pretty bad, and it seemed like he was kind of struggling. And then it feels like that was just settling back into a really fast series because the final two periods he was obviously going much better and helped Robertson get going. So I think you have to lean with the Stars. It feels like now their depth advantage that everyone was expecting to play out in their favor is like much more likely to actually happen. So I think Stars are past, but not like a dream handicap game. I definitely wouldn't add if you had a lot of good Stars futures on the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting to that time where it's really, really difficult. No matter which way you want to cut it. And I think that you guys said it well with the Skinner situation. Just feel like when you're handicapping, Edmonton throws a monkey wrench into the entire thing. And that affects the total as well. FanDuel's still dealing a 5.5 right now. Everyone else is pretty much 6, and it's used to the over. I'm considering grabbing that over 5.5. It's funny because the least total expected goals between the two teams was in Game 3, and that was the game that goes over of the three. And it's just NHL, Stanley Cup betting for you. It's hard. So I feel like, there's been obviously the strong trends with road teams, dogs especially, but Edmonton here, it feels like a Florida handicap of like from Game 4, in that you're just betting because you think they're going to tie the series and this is going to go long, and that can totally be rationale because it's a lot of what happened tonight in Florida. Although they did dominate, but that kind of felt like that. If that was your if that was your play, that was somewhere in your handicap. It felt like, and it's hard. It's really difficult. Every way I cut it, I'm having a hard time. So I think I'm just going to go with that over 5.5 on the board there.
Yeah. It is like it. I feel like this series is like it's poised in such a weird way, where you'd expect. I think both teams like kind of showed in Game 3 that they, and actually through all 3 games, like they can kind of just play whatever style the other one wants to try to push. If whoever's got like the better of the tempo or whatever, and that makes it really interesting. It's from a handicapping perspective. I'm just haunted by the goals now, and if we are expecting this to be tight and the odds are where they are, I just would lean with the underdog, knowing that their goalie is much less likely to cede a goal like that we saw from Skinner. The other thing too, that I'm going to be looking for here is Tyler Seguin props. I mean, that's a nice assignment he's got going with if Hintz continues to play like he did in the last 40. And Robertson obviously is going to draw more attention after the hat trick, and he looks like he's going. So Sagan's number, he's like I think he's plus 370 as an anytime goal scorer right now. That's of interest to me. Nick, anything else here before we move on?
Well, I think the other interesting note that we didn't quite throw out there is that there's obviously very clear Darnell Nurse had a horrific game, and CC struggled the way that he always has. And it does seem like there is going to be a move on the back end for the Oilers. I do think that's going to help them. I don't think there's any chance Nurse comes out. I'd believe that when I see it. I think he's a gigantic part of that team. Not saying that I think he's that good, but it just feels like one of those things. He's just a complete pillar in the locker room, and like you were paying the guy $9.5 million. So, and it honestly feels like he's getting it worse than CeCe now, which seems kind of ridiculous because I've thought CeCe's been like consistently this awful all playoff. So I do think that they're gonna probably put in Broberg because apparently Stetcher's actually injured, which I wasn't aware of, but kind of makes sense given that they hadn't changed it up. So I do think that's actually could help them. I don't think it could be any worse, really. So I'm actually pretty interested to see the way that they skate, like how the lines shake out at morning skate, because I do think they can do some things differently. I think they might maybe shake up Bouchard and Ekholm off of the same pairing. Couldn't be another thing they might consider. So all of those things I think would actually help because it's been about as bad as it could get. I don't think you're ever going to have one pairing get demolished the way that pairing has. So I was also really surprised to see Nurse and CC back together in that game. So that could be one thing that helps the Oilers try to tread water in the non-Bouchard at home minutes if they can get just really anything. But that might be reaching for straws.
It's the conference finals when you're thinking, man, they got to get Troy Stetcher in there. Oh God, Troy Stetcher's hurt. This isn't good. I love it's so much fun. We were talking about we'll shift to the Panthers and Rangers now, and we were talking about the Paul Maurice's decision to sit Ryan Lomberg and Nick Cousins in favor of Steven Lawrence and Kyle Okposo. And on a February night when there's 8 games on the board, we wouldn't even notice it. And if we brought it up on the podcast that Kyle Okposo was drawing into the lineup for Ryan Lomberg, we'd be doing you, the listener, a disservice for wasting your time talking about it. But in the conference final, everything gets put under a magnifying glass. One of those great cliches, right? The magnifying glass. The storm clouds of war are gathering.
I'll add in though, Leboff. If the Oilers Dallas game was in December, Nurse might be getting scratched. So that's
they both would. You could. I mean, CC's. I mean, the two of them have just been terrible. I think for all playoff, but as Nick said, I feel like Nurse. Yeah, Nurse has the huge ticket, so he gets and he's one of the. It's not close to the face of the franchise, but one of the faces. So, that's the Wednesday night game.